Hi, I'm Heather Bennett.
And I'm Alan Feldman from the Laguna Woods Democratic Club. Thank you for taking your time to join us today. For the first part of this program, it's election time, so we are going to be speaking with Cotty Petrie-Norris, the Democratic candidate for the California State Assembly in the 74th Assembly District. If you live in Laguna Woods, you're in the 74th Assembly District. So, Cotty, I want to thank you for taking your time and for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
And the first question, but I'm going to question, why don't you just introduce yourself to people and tell us why you're running and
Well, I am, as you said, I'm Cotty Petrie-Norris, and I'm running to represent the 74th Assembly District, and that includes South Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Woods, right here, most of Irvine, and Costa Mesa. And my primary motivation for running is that we desperately need an effective voice in Sacramento. So we need a representative who's representing this community in Sacramento, who's working hard to pass legislation that we need across this district, and who's bringing our fair share of tax dollars back into our community. And that's not happening right now. And so that was my primary motivation for jumping into this important race.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, because a lot of people really don't know. They're not familiar with the local offices. Tell us about the State Assembly, what it does. And,
So it's funny you should ask that. I find I often, when I tell somebody I'm running for Assembly, the very first thing they say is, wow, that's amazing, I'm so excited for you. And then the second thing they say is, wait, what's the California State Assembly? So it's a good place to start. So California State Assembly is essentially California's Congress. So working with the governor and the California State Senate, the Assembly is responsible for passing laws for the state of California, for deciding whether and how to raise tax revenue, and also for establishing the budget for the state, which really sets the priorities for California and the priorities for how we're going to invest and how we're going to grow the economy. And California's economy is not just the largest in the United States. California's economy is the fourth largest economy in the world. So what happens in California government matters a lot, and having a good assembly member represent us matters a lot too.
And how about this? We just finished a
Yes,
session
it's
of the
been
legislature.
a busy session.
All right, now there's hundreds, maybe thousands of bills waiting on the governor's desk to be signed or vetoed. Your take of it, what happened in this assembly, in this last legislative session? What happened good, what happened bad? And how did our current member of the assembly stack up there?
Well, there's a couple of things that I think are important to highlight for the residents in Orange County and the residents in Laguna Woods. The first is the passage of a bill, it's called Assembly Bill 448. And that essentially is going to create the Orange County Housing Trust, which is a really critical first step as we work together as a county to address our growing homelessness crisis. The bill actually passed unanimously, which was terrific, and enjoyed bipartisan support from the entire Orange County delegation. So every single member of Orange County's delegation was a sponsor of that bill, except unfortunately for one member, our own member. So he voted for the bill, but he didn't step up and take a leadership role, didn't sponsor the legislation, which I thought was disappointing. And then another bill that I think is really good news for Orange County and for our community is a bill was passed that is going to limit the expansion of offshore oil drilling off the California coast. And that's been such a huge topic and such a big issue for so many of us. And I know, anyone I talk to across the district, whether you are Democrat, Republican, it crosses party lines. People do not want to see more offshore oil drilling off the California coast. This bill enjoyed big bipartisan support. Unfortunately, our current representative voted against the bill, so he effectively voted in favor of more offshore oil drilling. And the very next day, he actually received a large campaign contribution from one of the big oil companies. And that to me is just kind of, it illustrates, I think, everything that's wrong with politics right now. And I think it's just so important that we elect people who are going to put people and community in front of politics, and who are going to put community in front of large contributions from large corporations.
There's another bill I'd like to ask you about
Yeah.
that I know we refer to him as your opponent, Matthew Harper
Yes.
is his name, Matt
Yes.
Harper. We have to bring it out. But there is a bill that was passed that mandated California go to all renewable energy sources by 2045, doing away with oil-fired, gas-fired, and coal-fired plants. So I'd like to know what you think about that, and also what did Matt Harper do about that bill? Was he in support of that, or was he opposed to that?
So Matt Harper, may come as no surprise, voted against that bill. That bill, did pass, and I think that is another really exciting example of California leading the way. We have led the nation on so many fronts, and I think that our leadership's willingness to confront the reality of climate change, to start tackling what is going to be the biggest challenge of our lifetimes, and to move us forward into a path of 100% renewables, I think is really exciting. And I think what's also exciting is it's not just addressing the huge challenge of climate change, it's also creating opportunities for new industry and new businesses and new jobs. And I hope that we see a lot of investment in Orange County to create green collar jobs and jobs in clean energy as we move forward, because I think there's huge opportunity there.
Just one of the bill I'd like to ask you about. I'll do it quickly. We can get to what your priorities would be in the Assembly. But it's called the Social Media Disclosure Act, which would make sure that the people that pay for ads that appear on social media, which is obviously a roaring issue right now, the people who pay for them would be identified. I know that passed the Assembly, and I know only 3 people voted against that in the Assembly. And one of them was our state assembly member from the 74th district. So what do you think of that bill? Why do you think he voted against that bill?
So I think that bill is a necessary step in our current climate. We have seen interference in our election from Russia operators and others that impacted our 2016 election. We need to make sure that we understand what's actually happening and who's putting information in front of us that we're consuming. In terms of why he would have voted against it, I really don't know. I feel like he's the sort of person who puts partisan politics in front of actually getting things done and in front of addressing the issues that his constituents care about. And frankly, I think that we need to move past the point of this kind of bitter partisan divide and come together to address the issues that we need to deal with, whether that's online privacy or climate change or education, and ensuring that California's economy continues to grow and continues to thrive.
And well, let's get to you personally now. It's November 7th. You've just been elected. You're the newest member of the California State Assembly. What are the things that you want to do in the State Assembly? What are your priorities?
Well, my priorities at a state level are, we've talked about the need for us to work vigorously to protect our coastline. Another priority for me is public education and ensuring that we are fully funding our public schools and that California schools can be the top in the nation. Another priority for me is making sure that we do protect Prop 13 and that we make sure that seniors are able to stay in their homes. And at a local level, my priorities and the places where I really think I'm going to be able to make a difference are in working with our local municipal governments to address some of the challenges that our communities are facing. So one example, and I don't think it's as big of an issue in Laguna Woods, but one example that's a really big issue in some of our other communities is the issue of sober living homes. And we need to implement some pretty urgent reforms in the sober living home arena. And our city governments have been grappling with this issue for years and years, and they haven't been able to get any traction because they haven't had support in Sacramento and they haven't had support at a state level. And this is an interesting issue because while Orange County only has 8% of California's population, we have almost 50% of these sober living homes. So while it's not a uniquely Orange County issue, it's one where we're being uniquely impacted. And so the leadership for addressing it needs to come from Orange County, and it hasn't happened so far. So that is going to be one of my top priorities on day one, is again to work with our local government officials to come up with common sense reforms and common sense legislation so that we can make sure that we're taking action in that area.
Yeah, leadership is, I think, very important in that area because people are very nervous, about having that kind of sober living house in their area. They don't understand what it is, and they're fearful of it, especially people with children. It takes leadership, takes people to explain what it is.
Well, and I think, yes, I think that so sober living homes, as you probably know, or they're called recovery residences, are group homes for people that are recovering from drug or alcohol addiction. And it's so important to make sure that we are helping people that need help and that want help to get their lives back on track. And I think everybody agrees with that. But what's happened is that there's been this proliferation of these sober living homes that are operated by really just a handful of unscrupulous operators who are taking advantage of some loopholes in the system and setting up these residences where the people who need help aren't actually getting help, and in some cases are dying because of the poor care. Communities are getting torn apart because they're being turned into these business districts effectively, and the taxpayer ends up footing the bill. So we need to make sure that we address that, because it's pretty straightforward that we can create a win-win-win situation where people that need help get help, our communities are respected, and our neighborhoods are respected, and that taxpayers aren't footing the bill for a handful of unscrupulous operators.
Yeah, you mentioned. Well, let's get to your campaign now.
Yeah.
And first of all, tell us how you feel it's going, and just as important, how can people get more information about it when if they're interested in finding out about your positions and about who you are?
Well, today it's 60 days until the election.
Right.
So we have started the 60-day countdown, and we're feeling really, really excited. The campaign is going great. We are getting incredible support from the community. I'm so proud to have been endorsed and supported by the California Teachers Association, by the Sierra Club, by the Orange County firefighters, and by the California firefighters, as well as a number of other groups. And one thing that I'm really proud of and really pleased by is that I've also built a coalition of support from leaders on both sides of the political spectrum. So I've been endorsed by some Republican leaders as well as by Democratic leaders. And that to me is just so critical as we move forward, that we have got, as I said, we've got to get away from this kind of bitter partisan divide and get to a place where we can build coalitions, where we can all sit down at the table to address our problems and challenges. We can partner, and we can actually keep moving California forward.
And what's the best way for people to get in touch with the campaign?
Well, you can find out more about my campaign on my website, which is votecottie.com. That's VOTECOTTIE.com. And that's the best place to find out what's happening with the campaign. You can also find us on Facebook, which is also Vote Cottie. So that's where you can keep up with everything we're doing. We've got a lot going on. I'd also love to invite you guys and anyone else who's listening. We've got our office opening next Tuesday, September 11th at 4 o'clock. Gavin Newsom is coming down, and he's going to help us kick off it's going to be the 8-week countdown until November. And so that's in our office in Costa Mesa, and you can find out more about that on our Facebook page.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming here. That was Cottie Petrie-Norris. She's a Democratic candidate for the California State Assembly in the 74th District here in Laguna Woods. You're in the 74th District if you live in Laguna Woods. So I want to thank you so much for coming here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Giving the people an opportunity to see and hear you. So thanks again. Thanks again. We'll be back with Duke Nguyen in just a minute. Well, welcome back for the second part of this program. Thank you for staying with us. And we are going to be speaking with Duke Nguyen, the Democratic candidate for the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
Well, Duke, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running, and a little bit about your past.
Well, thank you for having me on. I am an immigrant. I came here in 1981 after spending a little 2 years over a refugee camp. I've been in Orange County all my life. I am currently married with 2 wonderful kids. I started my law enforcement with Santa Police Department, and now with LA County Sheriff and the LA County District Attorney Office. So I have a 26-year veteran with the county. 2 things why I run. Number 1 is for my kids. Number 2, after 26 years serving the LA County up there with the people up there, I'm now wanting to serve the rest of my career with the people of Orange County. And I'm hoping to be elected as their sheriff. And I want to continue on the serving the public at the same time. I want to make sure that we change our law enforcement in Orange County for better serve our community into the 21st century.
Well, let me ask you about the current sheriff's office in Orange County. There's a lot going on there, and not all of it is good. So what's your take on what the sheriff's office in Orange County, what's going on there right now?
Well, you know, I'm glad you asked that, because the sheriff right now, as you know, 70% of the Orange County budget goes to the sheriff department. And the sheriff department has a huge task, which is monitoring the custody or the correctional facility, and also the courthouses. It's also take on a lot of the contract cities, especially in South County, and there's 2 up there in Staten and Midway City.
Right.
So that's a huge project to take upon. And you know, in any sheriff department, the correctional facility has always been a problematic. So here in Orange County, we have the current department has hit with a lot of scandals, which has unfortunately is going to cost the taxpayer lots of money in the year to come.
All right. What do you think should be done about what's going on there? I mean, is it a correctable situation, do you believe?
You know, everything is correctable, and there are the 3 elements to correct this problem. Number 1, it has to do with leadership and management. So the current administration's, what we have now is what I call it unable to act. They're not willing to take action and acknowledge that, hey, we have a problem and let's fix the problem. So number 1 for me is going to be correcting the management, bringing in the right team, the right attitude, and the right leadership to lead. Number 2 is how do I restore the correctional facility, which is getting the trust from the people who are incarcerated to work with us law enforcement. Number 3 is how do we, again, now restore the trust in our community? Because that's the huge task, is we got to bring that trust and restore back to our community, because I call into the 21st century what my motto is customer service. We want to make sure we deliver the best customer service to our citizens.
Right. How about the other aspects of the sheriff's department, things like the grand jury reports and so forth, and what would you do to handle them differently, handle them better than the sheriff's department is doing now?
Well, you know, we got to acknowledge the problem. So number 1, you know, about 2 years ago, we have the jailhouse escape.
Right.
We got 3 felony escape in our community that put the community at risk. You have the second scandal, which is the jailhouse snitch. You have a former deputies who's running around and terrorized while they're in custody, and then running a snitch program in there. Okay, the third one that we have is, you know, the grand jury has came out. 44% of the death that has the death that was in custody could have been preventable. Okay,
Wow.
and then 44% of that. That's a very high number. And then recently, you have the scandal of the recording of the conversation between attorney and clients. You know, that's attorney-client privileges. We all know in Law 101, you're not allowed or able to record anything that is discussed between them. And, you know, going back to this issue, again, number 1 is leadership. There's a lack of supervision, and there's a lack of leadership. Therefore, this is the cause of the scandal. If we don't stop it, it's going to rise, and as a result, it's going to cost the taxpayer more money.
Right. Part of the sheriff's job also is dealing with homeless population. There's a large homeless population here in Orange County. What would you do to more effectively deal with our homeless population? I won't say solve the problem, because I don't know that the problem can be solved, you know, in our lifetime anyway. But we could certainly handle it better than it's being handled.
Definitely. You have to be, as a sheriff, you have to take a role model and take the lead. So we have all the homeless countywide. We can't shift from the homeless from one city to another. It's going to revolt around the chair, and doesn't help anybody. And again, the problem is going to arise if the sheriff department doesn't assist the county. First of all, this is the county issue, and the sheriff is going to step in. So what my intention is that $750 million that we have, that the county have, I want to utilize that amount of money to do several things. Number 1 is to purchase structure, already existing structures, and remodel and renovate the structures, and half are becoming a homeless shelter for that. In that homeless shelter, I also want to make sure that we have a clinic, especially dealing with the mental health. Part of that money is not only utilizing for the help for the homeless situation, but also for our community who also need the mental health for their evaluation team.
Right.
Right, similar to what they just did in Los Angeles then.
Yes, I always take part of that. My partner right now is assigned to what we call a MET team, mental evaluation team. It consists of a medical staff and then a sworn personnel. They get called out in the street. They go countywide, and they assess the patient and try to get that patient admitted into a 72-hour evaluations.
Now, let me ask you about one other thing here about which I guess it's two things which have unfortunately become connected, and that is the security of schools, our schools, and also the prevalence of gun violence and these mass shootings which we've seen in our schools. What would be your plan of action be to make the schools more secure and dealing with guns also, I guess?
Great question. So that's coming in two parts.
Yeah.
The number one is having more personnel present, which is having more school resources officers. We got to bring it down to every school has an officer assigned to, not every one for every 5 or 6 school. So we got to assign it to one officer per school. And at the same time, a lot of our shootings are what I call occur in-house. So part of the preventive utilizing the $750 million is educate our teachers and at the same time educate our parents and have some sort of clinical inside the school where the teachers can evaluate certain students and say and might reach out to them, say, hey, you might need help, and get that students, where the help at an early stage.
Yeah. How about the I guess it's a plan that the Secretary of Education is putting forth about arming teachers in the schools? Do you think that's a good idea?
Absolutely not, because
Doesn't sound like it to me.
No, it's not, because a firearm is a weapon, and having the teachers to arm while they're in school, now that's another tool that they don't need to utilize and have. I am against that. I do not want teachers to be armed while they are teaching our students in school, because that's another issue where the school have to take upon and train those. And I don't think the budget allocate for those. I believe the budget should be going to more of a books, iPad, or mental health within the school.
Yeah. And another important part of the sheriff's job, which actually we've seen kind of close up here, is preparing for emergency preparedness. We live in a fragile environment here with the wildfires and people saying about climate change, the sea rise. What do we do? What can the sheriff do to help us prepare for a potential emergency? I mean, it could be devastating. All the people that live shuffled into this little area in the coast here,
Right.
Something could really be devastating.
Right. I grew up in 26 years in law enforcement, so I have the mentality of, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So I talked about wanting to have Wi-Fi along Silverado Canyon all the way on up to Orchard Hill, part of Irvine, all the way on down, because there's no communication out there. Okay, I want to talk about helping those community out there and clean all the backyard, brush and debris out there, because that's a fire hazard at the same time. At the same time, I want to make sure that we have what we call ingress and egress, making sure that when there are a case of evacuation, that we have a flow of traffic, that people are able to get out sooner. At the same time, we have to work together with other police municipality and the California Highway Patrol to get those people out and in.
Yeah.
Huntington Beach, you're talking about when there's a volleyball tournaments or a surfing tournament, we're talking about 1 million folks are down there. In case of disaster emergency, how do you evacuate that 1 million people up? How do you get the cell site cell signals, people who call 911 where they're unable to? So that's something we have to sit down as a sheriff with that agency and work out a problem where our citizens can be protected at the same time that they are not in danger.
Yeah, want to talk for a minute because I think people may get the misnomer when we talk about the Sheriff's Department. I don't think anybody has any kind of real problem with the men and women who do the patrolling work and investigate the crimes. The problem with the Sheriff's Department is the administration of the Sheriff's Department. Previous Sheriff Mike Corona went to jail. He may still be there, I don't know. The current sheriff, Sharon Hutchins, you know, a judge in open court told her he thought she was lying when she testified about the snitch program, and turns out that she was.
Right.
There really seems to be a culture there of illegality, stonewalling, impunity. Do you agree that that's the case with the Sheriff's Department? And
I unfortunately have to agree with that, and I'm going to change the way the culture is. Like I said earlier, I want to move the department into the 21st century, and part of that is going to be implementing body cam. It is a very important project, and I believe that is what you call a necessary tool to ensure the county liability at the same time to protect our citizens.
yeah, Well, Duke, we want to thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming here and letting the people here in Laguna Woods have a chance to see you and meet you. It's so difficult, especially with all the noise coming out of Washington. You know, we get down ballot candidates. People just don't know anything about them, and when you come right down to it, the sheriff's office would have so much more to do with our day-to-day life than the governor in Sacramento or the senator in Washington, the names that people know. So we really appreciate you coming here. And that was Duke Nguyen, the Democratic candidate for Orange County Sheriff. You know, the Orange County Sheriff's Office is truly a disaster area. Duke Nguyen spoke about it a little bit. But you have the informant scandal where the sheriff's office recruits informants and they place them in jail cells with people who are accused of crimes, not convicted, accused. They're represented by attorneys. It sounds like a really slick crime-fighting move. Problem is, it's illegal and it's unconstitutional. And now, as Duke spoke about also, we found out that for the last 3 years, the Orange County Sheriff's Office has been intercepting telephone calls between people, again, accused, not convicted of crimes, but accused of crimes, talking with their attorneys as they prepare for their trials. You don't need a legal education to know that that's not right, not legal, but they did it for 3 years. They claimed it was a computer glitch. I've had a lot of computer glitches. They don't take 3 years to find. They don't take 3 years to correct. We know that. The other candidate running for sheriff's office, Don Barnes, running for Orange County Sheriff, has been a member of this sheriff's department for 29 years. There is no way he is going to touch the culture of illegality and impunity that seems to be existing in the administration of the sheriff's department, and especially in its jails. I think Duke Nguyen is really the perfect guy for this office. A pair of outside eyes, almost 30 years experience in all facets of law enforcement with different agencies. He can see what needs to be done, and he's going to get the sheriff's department back to doing what the sheriff's department is supposed to be doing: protecting, defending, and serving the people of Orange County. Our current sheriff's department is too busy trying to protect itself from public scrutiny to protect us citizens. They're placing us in jeopardy. And just want to remind everybody, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And please remember to vote. The election is November 6th. Vote by mail, vote at the polls. You need to vote, and don't stop at the top of the ballot. We all know who's running for governor. We all know who's running for senator. We know who's running for Congress. But these other offices down the line, as we just spoke about a minute ago, they are so important. You need to learn about these people. It's not always that easy, and you need to vote the entire ballot. So please do that. And thank you all for joining us, and we will see you again soon.